The coffee hit the marble floor before Claire Whitmore even saw his face. 1 second, she was power walking through JFK's Terminal 4, phone pressed to her ear as her board of directors tore apart her latest hire. The next, she was staring at a brown stain spreading across a stranger's worn flannel shirt, a man who had the audacity to be standing exactly where she needed to walk. "Watch where you're going," she snapped, not caring that his little girl was crying or that his interview folder was now soaked in espresso. She had no idea she'd just destroyed the day of the one man who would change everything. Before we dive into this story of power, pride, and unexpected love, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The thing about Claire Whitmore was this. She didn't do chaos. She orchestrated. She commanded. She conquered. At 34, she'd built Whitmore Solutions from a scrappy startup in her Columbia dorm room into a tech empire valued at $300 million. She'd graced the cover of Forbes twice, been called a visionary by the Wall Street Journal, and ruthless by everyone who'd ever sat across a negotiating table from her. Both labels fit perfectly, like the Armani suit she wore to every board meeting and the Louboutin heels that clicked intimidation into every conference room floor she walked. Chaos, however, had other plans for her that Thursday morning. "Claire, are you even listening?" Marcus Chen's voice crackled through her AirPods, irritation bleeding through the connection. Marcus was Whitmore Solutions' CFO, and the closest thing Claire had to a friend on her executive team, which meant he was the only person allowed to use that tone with her. "I'm listening," Claire said tersely, weaving between travelers in JFK's Terminal 4 like a shark through shallow water. "You're telling me the board thinks I'm playing favorites. They think the Denver expansion is a vanity project. They think I'm losing focus. They think you're gambling the company's future on sentiment instead of strategy." Claire's jaw tightened. Her carry-on wheeled behind her with mechanical precision, the sound of it cutting through the airport din. "The Denver market represents a 43% growth opportunity in the next fiscal quarter. I've run the numbers 17 different ways. This isn't sentiment, Marcus. It's vision." "Then why did you hire someone with zero corporate experience to lead it?" The question landed like a slap. Claire stopped walking for half a second, her momentum breaking just long enough for a family of 4 to nearly slam into her from behind. She resumed her stride faster now, anger propelling her forward. "Because Michael Reeves has built 3 successful small businesses," Marcus interrupted. "Coffee shops and boutique consulting. That's not the same as managing a multi-million-dollar regional office. And you know it. I know that he understands markets the board has written off as Claire." Marcus's voice dropped, losing its edge. "I'm on your side. I'm always on your side. But right now, Margaret and the others are circling. If Denver fails, they won't just question this hire. They'll question you." Margaret Castellano, board chair, former Whitmore Solutions CEO, before Claire staged what Forbes had diplomatically called a visionary leadership transition and what everyone else called a boardroom coup. Margaret had smiled through the whole thing, voted in favor of Claire's promotion, and spent the next 3 years waiting for her to fail. "Let them circle," Claire said coldly. "I didn't build this company by playing it safe." "No, you built it by being smarter than everyone else in the room. Don't let pride make you stupid." The call ended before Claire could respond. She ripped the AirPods from her ears and shoved them into her bag with more force than necessary. Around her, JFK hummed with its usual chaos. Crying babies, CNN blaring from overhead monitors, the robotic voice announcing delayed flights. Claire hated airports, hated the crowds, the inefficiency, the way people seemed to forget how to walk in straight lines the moment they entered a terminal. Her phone buzzed. Text from her assistant, Julie. "Reminder. Regional Director interview rescheduled to 2 p.m. at Manhattan office. Candidate flew in this morning." "Don't be late." Claire checked her watch. 12:47 p.m. She'd landed 20 minutes ago, and her driver was waiting in the rideshare lot. She'd make it with time to spare, which meant time to grab coffee, review the candidate's file, and remind herself why she'd agreed to interview a nobody from Seattle for a position that could make or break her credibility with the board. She rounded the corner toward the coffee kiosk near Gate 23, her attention already shifting to the mental checklist of questions she'd grill this Daniel Reyes with when it happened. The collision was violent in its suddenness. One moment Claire was moving forward with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. The next, her shoulder slammed into something solid. A man, she registered dimly, and her 20-ounce dark roast launched from her hand like a caffeinated missile. Time fractured into slow-motion chaos, the coffee cup spinning through the air, lid popping off mid-flight, hot liquid spraying in a perfect arc. A little girl's scream, high and startled, the wet slap of coffee hitting fabric, skin, tile. Claire stumbled, caught herself, and looked up into the face of a man who was simultaneously trying to protect a child, retrieve a falling duffel bag, and avoid being scalded by Colombian dark roast. He failed at all three. "Watch where you're going!" The words left Claire's mouth before her brain could stop them. Pure reflex, the same tone she used on incompetent junior analysts and venture capitalists who wasted her time. The man straightened slowly. He was tall, broad-shouldered in a way that suggested physical work rather than gym memberships. His flannel shirt, coffee-stained now, the brown spreading across faded blue plaid, hung loose over jeans that had seen better days. His shoes were scuffed work boots that had no business being in an airport unless you were flying to a construction site. But it was his eyes that stopped Claire mid-outrage, dark, tired, and utterly, devastatingly calm. "We were standing still," he said quietly. The little girl, 5, maybe 6, pressed against his leg, pink headphones askew on her dark curls. Her frozen backpack had tumbled open, scattering crayons across the terminal floor like tiny rainbow corpses. She wasn't crying anymore, but her lower lip trembled, and her enormous brown eyes fixed on Claire with something between fear and accusation. Claire opened her mouth, closed it. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to help, to acknowledge that she'd been the one moving, that she'd been the distracted one, that this was objectively her fault. But Claire Whitmore didn't apologize in public. Apologies were admissions of weakness, and weakness was blood in the water. "You shouldn't stand in the middle of the walkway," she said instead, her voice ice over steel. "People are trying to get places." The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For a moment, Claire thought he might argue, might push back with the righteous anger of someone who'd just been scalded by overpriced airport coffee. Instead, he knelt down, his movements careful and deliberate, and began gathering his daughter's crayons from the floor. "Come on, princess," he murmured to the girl. "Let's get your things." The little girl knelt beside him, her small hands trembling as she picked up a purple crayon. "Is your shirt okay, Daddy?" "It's fine, baby. Just coffee. It'll wash out." Something twisted in Claire's chest, something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. She squashed it ruthlessly. "I have a meeting," she announced to no one in particular, spinning on her heel. She made it 3 steps before the man's voice stopped her. "Ma'am?" The word hit her like a bucket of cold water. "Ma'am." Not even Ms. Whitmore, or the respectful acknowledgement her position usually commanded. Just "ma'am," delivered with the bland politeness of someone addressing a stranger who'd wronged them but wasn't worth the energy of confrontation. Claire turned. The man was standing now, his daughter's hand tucked safely in his, her backpack re-zipped and slung over his shoulder next to his worn duffel. He held out a small rectangle of cardstock that had apparently escaped from Claire's bag during the collision. Her business card. "You dropped this," he said evenly. Claire snatched it from his hand without a word and walked away, her heels clicking sharp staccato against the floor. She didn't look back. She didn't see the way the man watched her go, his expression unreadable. She didn't see him glance down at his daughter and force a smile. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked the little girl softly. She nodded, gripping his hand tighter. "Is your interview going to be okay, Daddy?" "I hope so, Princess. I really hope so." Bosn't. The car ride into Manhattan was supposed to calm Claire down. Instead, it gave her time to stew. She sat in the back of the black Mercedes sedan, her laptop open on her knees, staring at a spreadsheet she wasn't actually reading. The encounter at the airport played on repeat in her mind, each replay adding fresh irritation. The audacity of that man, standing in the middle of the terminal like he owned the place. The inconvenience of it all. The coffee stain she had probably left on his shirt. Not her problem, she told herself firmly. He should have been more aware of his surroundings. Her phone buzzed. Julie again. Candidate confirmed for 2 p.m. Daniel Reyes, Seattle. File attached. Sorry, it's last minute. Margaret called again, asking about Denver metrics. Claire's finger hovered over the attachment, but she didn't open it. She knew the basics already. Daniel Reyes, 33, former small business owner, no corporate experience, interviewed by her VP of operations last week, and somehow impressed him enough to warrant a CEO-level second interview. Claire had agreed mostly to shut Marcus up, to prove that she was thorough, that she considered all angles before making decisions. She'd give this Reyes guy 15 minutes, ask him 3 impossible questions, and send him packing with a polite rejection. Then she'd call Marcus and tell him she'd done her due diligence. The car slid through midtown traffic with practiced ease, depositing Claire in front of Whitmore Solutions headquarters at 1:47 p.m. The building was one of those sleek glass towers that screamed tech money, all clean lines and reflective surfaces, with the company logo etched in brushed steel above the revolving doors. Claire's building, her empire, built floor by floor, contract by contract, 14-hour day by 14-hour day. She rode the elevator to the 23rd floor where her corner office overlooked the Hudson River and the executive conference rooms gleamed with floor-to-ceiling windows. Julie met her at reception, tablet in hand, blonde hair in its usual perfect bun. "You made it," Julie said, relief evident in her voice. "Conference room A is set up. Water, coffee, the good stuff from the espresso machine, not the break room sludge." I pulled the candidate's file and left hard copies on the table. "Marcus wants 5 minutes before you start." "Tell Marcus I'm busy. He said you'd say that. He also said," and I quote, "tell her this is about Denver or I'm walking into that interview myself." Claire sighed. "Fine, 2 minutes. Where is he?" "Your office." Marcus was standing at Claire's window when she walked in, hands in his pockets, staring out at the river. He turned when he heard the door close, his expression somewhere between concerned and exasperated. "You're doing it again," he said without preamble. "I'm doing my job." "You're being stubborn because Margaret questioned you. That's ego, not strategy." Claire dropped her bag on her desk and crossed her arms. "You have 90 seconds before I need to prep for this interview. Use them wisely." Marcus rubbed his face. "I pulled Reyes's file, really pulled it, not just what HR sent over. You want to know what I found?" "Apparently." 3 small businesses in 5 years, all successful, marginally. A coffee shop that broke even, a consulting firm that serviced maybe 10 clients, and a boutique marketing agency that closed last year. No corporate experience, no team management beyond himself and maybe one part-timer. And you know what else I found? I'm sure you're about to tell me. He's a single father. Wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. He's raising a 5-year-old daughter alone, which explains the employment gaps and the lack of upward trajectory. The information landed heavier than it should have. Claire kept her face neutral. And this matters why? Because you're about to put someone with no safety net, no corporate training, and no margin for error in charge of our riskiest expansion. If he fails, it's not just bad for us. It destroys him. If I don't give people chances, Marcus, I'm just perpetuating the same system that told me I was too young, too female, too risky for venture capital. Or did you forget I built this company on a rejected loan application and a maxed-out credit card? That's different. You were... What? Special? Claire's voice went sharp. More deserving? Or did I just fit the narrative better because I wasn't a widower with a kid? Marcus held up his hands. I'm not saying don't hire him. I'm saying make sure you're hiring him for the right reasons. If this is about proving something to Margaret, this is about finding the best person for the job. Then find him. But make sure it's actually him. He left without waiting for a response. Claire stood alone in her office, the city sprawling below her, and felt the familiar weight of being right settle over her shoulders like armor. She had 7 minutes. Conference room A was pristine. Glass table, 12 leather chairs, a wall-mounted monitor for presentations. Claire entered at exactly 2 p.m., her heels announcing her arrival, her expression set in what Julie called her boardroom face, polite, professional, and just slightly intimidating enough to make people think twice before wasting her time. She rounded the corner, her opening line already forming, "Mr. Reyes, thank you for coming in today," and froze. The man from the airport stood when she entered. For a moment, neither of them moved. Recognition hit Claire like a physical blow, followed immediately by a flash of hot embarrassment that she crushed before it could show on her face. Daniel Reyes looked different in a button-down and tie, still slightly rumpled, the shirt pressed but not expensive, the tie knotted neatly but not professionally. He'd cleaned the coffee stain, or tried to, but a faint shadow of it remained visible on the collar. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes, those same dark, tired eyes, held something that might have been grim amusement. "Ms. Whitmore," he said evenly. "Thank you for seeing me." Claire's mind raced through calculations, abort the interview and admit she'd been unprofessional, continue and pretend she didn't remember, or acknowledge it head-on and control the narrative. She chose option 3. "Mr. Reyes." She moved to the head of the table and sat, gesturing for him to do the same. "This should be interesting." He sat, didn't apologize for the airport, didn't try to explain or smooth things over, just sat, folded his hands on the table, and waited. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. 5, 10. Claire broke first and hated herself for it. "Where's your daughter?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Daycare center on the 2nd floor. Your HR department recommended it when I mentioned I'd be flying in alone." That must have been expensive, daycare and the flight. Something flickered in Daniel's expression. It was. Another silence. Claire opened the file in front of her, scanning information she'd already memorized. "You closed your last business 6 months ago." "Yes." "Why?" "It wasn't sustainable anymore. I was trying to be a father and a business owner, and I was failing at both. My daughter needed stability more than I needed the ego boost of saying I owned a company." The honesty of it caught Claire off guard. She was used to candidates who spun failure into learning experiences, who reframed every setback as strategic pivoting. Daniel just stated the facts. "You have no corporate management experience," she continued. "No. No team leadership beyond yourself. I managed contractors and freelancers. That counts for something, but no, not in the traditional sense. Then why should I hire you to lead a regional office?" Daniel leaned forward slightly, and for the first time Claire saw something shift in his demeanor. Not aggression, but engagement. He pulled a folder from the worn leather messenger bag at his feet and slid it across the table. "Because I understand failure," he said quietly. "I understand markets that everyone's written off. I understand what it's like to rebuild from nothing, to make every dollar count, to turn skepticism into opportunity." Claire opened the folder. Inside was a proposal, 30 pages, professionally bound, dense with data and projections. She flipped through it, her trained eye catching revenue models, demographic breakdowns, partnership strategies. "When did you put this together?" she asked. "The flight here and last night and the week before that. This is..." She trailed off, scanning a section on local business partnerships. It was good, better than good. It was exactly the kind of granular, street-level strategy her analysts always missed because they were too busy looking at national trends. "I know I don't fit the profile," Daniel said. "I know my resume doesn't scream corporate leader, but I also know Denver. I grew up there. I know the neighborhoods your market research writes off as low income are full of small business owners who need exactly what Whitmore Solutions offers. They just can't afford what your competitors charge. I know the tech workers living in Reno and Capitol Hill are hungry for tools that actually work instead of Silicon Valley vaporware. And I know that if you give me a chance, I'll work harder for this than anyone you could hire from inside the system." Claire looked up from the proposal, studying him. "You're asking me to gamble my company's reputation on potential instead of proven results. I'm asking you to bet on someone who's already lost everything once and knows how to build it back. That's not potential, that's proof." The door opened. Marcus entered, followed by 2 other executives Claire had asked to sit in on the interview. Susan Park, VP of Operations, and James Whitfield, the man Daniel would be replacing as regional director. Susan smiled pleasantly. James looked skeptical. "Sorry we're late," Susan said, taking a seat. "Traffic was murder." Claire made introductions. Daniel shook hands with each of them, his grip firm but not aggressive. James, a silver-haired veteran who'd been angling for a promotion instead of a replacement, leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed. "So you're the miracle worker," James said. His tone wasn't quite hostile, but it wasn't friendly either. "Just someone who needs a job," Daniel replied evenly. Why Whitmore Solutions? Susan asked, her voice warm and genuinely curious. You could have applied anywhere. Why us? Daniel hesitated, and for the first time Claire saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Honestly, he said, because I read an article about Ms. Whitmore building this company after every traditional investor turned her down. I read about how she fought for a vision everyone said was too risky, and I thought, if she could take that chance on herself, maybe she'd be willing to take a chance on someone like me. The room went quiet. Susan glanced at Claire, eyebrows raised. Marcus studied the table. James's skeptical expression didn't change, but something in his posture softened slightly. Claire felt the weight of Daniel's words settle over her, uncomfortable and electric. She'd built her reputation on being hard, on demanding excellence, on never letting sentiment cloud business decisions. This man was asking her to live up to the mythology she'd created around herself. The Denver market is bleeding, James said, breaking the silence. 3 years of declining revenue, 2 failed partnership attempts, and a regional team that's barely functional. You think a proposal written on a plane is going to fix that? No, Daniel said simply. I think sustained effort, local relationships, and someone who's actually from there might make a dent. The proposal is just the beginning. And if you fail, James pressed, if you take this job and can't deliver, what happens to your daughter? You uproot her, move to a new city, burn through your savings on the hope that this works out. And then what? The question was cruel in its precision. Claire saw Daniel's jaw tighten, saw the flash of something raw across his face before he locked it down. Then I fail in front of her, Daniel said quietly. And I teach her that trying is still worth it. That's the only lesson I have left to give her. The room fell into another silence, this one heavier. Susan looked down at her hands. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Even James seemed taken aback by the honesty of it. Claire spoke before she could think better of it. Experience isn't always listed on paper, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Sometimes it's lived. Every head in the room turned toward her. Marcus's expression was unreadable. Susan looked surprised. James frowned. Claire stood, closing Daniel's proposal. Thank you, Mr. Reyes. We'll be in touch by end of day. Daniel rose, gathering his materials with careful precision. Thank you for your time. He left without another word, the door clicking shut behind him with quiet finality. The moment he was gone, James exhaled sharply. You're not seriously considering this. I'm considering everything, Claire said coolly. He's a risk, a massive, unpredictable risk with a sob story. Watch yourself, Claire interrupted, her voice going dangerously soft. James fell silent. Susan leaned forward. I liked him. The proposal is solid, and he's clearly done his homework. But James isn't wrong about the risk factor. If this goes south, the board will crucify you. The board will crucify me anyway, Claire said. At least this way, I'll know I made the decision instead of letting fear make it for me. Marcus stood. Can I talk to you? Alone? Claire nodded to Susan and James, dismissing them. When the room was empty except for Marcus, he closed the door and turned to face her. Tell me you're not hiring him out of guilt for spilling coffee on him. Don't be ridiculous. Then tell me you're hiring him because he's the best candidate, not because he reminds you of yourself. The accuracy of the observation stung. Claire kept her face blank. He understands the market. He has perspective our other candidates don't. And his proposal is good. I read it too. It's very good. But Claire, good proposals don't always translate to good execution, and you know it. This man has a child depending on him. If he fails, you're not just affecting your bottom line. You're affecting a little girl's life. And if I don't give him the chance, I'm affecting it anyway by making sure he stays stuck where he is. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I can't argue with you when you do this. Do what? Turn every business decision into a referendum on character. Sometimes things are just business, Claire. Sometimes the smart play is the safe play. The safe play would have been taking the first buyout offer 3 years ago instead of expanding. The safe play would have been hiring from within instead of building the team I wanted. When has safe ever gotten us anywhere? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, tired and resigned. You're going to hire him, aren't you? I'm going to call him in 3 hours and offer him the position at $80,000 a year plus moving expenses and benefits. He'll accept because he doesn't have another choice. And then we're both going to prove that taking risks on people is still worth it. And if we're wrong? Claire looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, at the empire she'd built from nothing but stubborn will and refusal to accept the limitations other people set for her. Then we fail forward, she said softly, just like we always have. At 5:47 p.m., Claire sat in her office and dialed Daniel Reyes' number. He answered on the second ring. Hello? Mr. Reyes, Claire Whitmore. A pause. She heard background noise, a child's laughter, the sound of a cartoon playing. Ms. Whitmore, I didn't expect to hear from you this quickly. I don't believe in wasting time. The position is yours if you want it. 80,000 base salary, performance bonuses tied to regional growth, full benefits, and will cover your moving expenses up to 15,000. You'd start in 3 weeks. Silence on the other end. Then, can I ask you something? You can ask. Why? You could hire someone with 10 years of corporate experience, someone without complications. Why take a chance on me? Claire leaned back in her chair, watching the sun set over the Hudson River. She thought about the airport, about coffee staining a stranger's shirt, about a little girl with pink headphones and crayons scattered across the floor, about the quiet dignity of a man who'd had every reason to be angry and chose grace instead. Because I built this company on people telling me I wasn't ready, she said finally, and I refused to become them. Another pause. When Daniel spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion, barely held in check. I accept. Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. You won't regret this. I know, Claire said. Welcome to Whitmore Solutions, Mr. Reyes. My assistant will send you the paperwork in the morning. She ended the call and sat in the gathering darkness of her office, the city lights beginning to sparkle below her like stars fallen to earth. She had no idea she'd just hired the man who would tear down every wall she'd ever built. But she would learn. 3 weeks felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Claire spent those weeks preparing for Daniel's arrival the way a general prepares for battle, strategically, methodically, and with absolute conviction that she'd made the right choice even as doubt whispered in the quiet moments between meetings. She had the Denver office deep cleaned, hired 2 additional support staff, and personally reviewed every contract and partnership agreement that had failed in the past 18 months. If Daniel Reyes was going to succeed, she would make damn sure he had the tools to do it. What she didn't prepare for was the way his presence would shift the entire energy of her company. Daniel arrived on a Monday morning in early October when the air had just begun to hint at autumn and the city still clung to the last warmth of summer. Claire wasn't there to greet him. She had a video call with investors in Singapore that couldn't be rescheduled, but Julie texted her a photo of Daniel standing in the lobby with his daughter, both of them looking slightly overwhelmed by the gleaming marble and steel. The little girl wore a yellow dress with sunflowers on it and clutched a worn stuffed rabbit. Daniel had traded his flannel for a navy suit that looked new but not expensive, the kind you bought at a department store when you needed to look professional on a budget. His tie was slightly crooked. Claire stared at the photo longer than she should have, something uncomfortable twisting in her chest. Then she deleted it and returned to her call. She didn't see Daniel again until late that afternoon, when Marcus brought him to her office for what was officially labeled an introductory strategy session, and what Claire privately thought of as a test. She wanted to see how he handled pressure, how he responded when challenged, whether the confidence from his interview would hold up under scrutiny. Mrs. Whitmore, Daniel said when Marcus ushered him in. His tie was still crooked. Thank you for this opportunity. Save the gratitude, Claire said, not unkindly. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Let's talk about Denver. For the next 90 minutes, they dissected the market. Claire threw scenarios at him. Budget cuts, partnership rejections, staffing shortages. Daniel fielded each one with the same measured calm he'd shown at the airport. Never flustered, never defensive. When he didn't know something, he said so. When he disagreed with her assessment, he explained why with data, not ego. You're assuming the tech sector is our primary target, Daniel said at one point, his finger tapping a spreadsheet Claire had pulled up on her monitor. But the real opportunity is small to medium businesses that are currently using outdated systems because they think enterprise software is out of their price range. If we can build a tiered pricing model that actually scales down instead of just offering light versions of tools they don't need, that's a revenue risk, Claire interrupted. Lower price points mean lower margins. In the short term, but higher volume and customer loyalty mean sustained growth. These businesses don't churn the way enterprise clients do when they get a better offer from a competitor. They stay because you treated them like they mattered when everyone else ignored them. Claire leaned back in her chair, studying him. You're describing a completely different business model than what we've been using. I'm describing the business model that would have saved my consulting firm if I'd understood it earlier. I learned from failing, Ms. Whitmore. That education cost me everything. You're getting it for $80,000 a year. Marcus, who'd been silent through most of the meeting, made a noise that might have been a laugh or a cough. Claire shot him a look. Fine, she said. You have 6 months to prove this model works in Denver. If revenue increases by 15% in that time frame, we expand it to other regions. If it doesn't, I'm gone, Daniel finished quietly. I know the terms. Good. Marcus will send you the Q4 projections tonight. I want your revised strategy on my desk by Friday. Daniel stood, gathering his notebook. You'll have it Thursday. Friday is fine. Thursday is better. He left before Claire could argue, the door closing with that same quiet finality as before. Marcus waited exactly 3 seconds before speaking. I hate that I like him, he said. You don't have to like him. You just have to make sure he doesn't destroy us. Claire, she looked up. Marcus was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? Nothing, he said finally. Just be careful. Of what? Of forgetting that he works for you, not with you. That distinction matters. Claire waved him off, already turning back to her computer, but his words lingered after he left, settling into the space behind her ribs like a warning she didn't want to hear. The first month was brutal. Daniel worked like a man possessed, which Claire supposed he was, possessed by desperation, by the need to prove himself, by the knowledge that failure meant more than just losing a job. She saw him at his desk at 6 in the morning when she arrived, and still there at 8 at night when she left. He took calls during lunch, scheduled meetings during dinner hours with West Coast clients, and somehow still managed to pick his daughter up from the after-school program Julie had helped him find. Claire told herself she only noticed because she needed to monitor his performance. That was a lie, and she knew it. She noticed the way he kept a photo of his daughter on his desk. Lily, Claire learned from Julie's gossip. The little girl grinning gap-toothed at the camera. She noticed that he brought lunch from home in a battered insulated bag because eating out was an expense he couldn't justify. She noticed the way other employees started gravitating toward him during coffee breaks, drawn to his quiet competence and the absence of ego that was so rare in corporate environments. And she noticed, though she tried not to, the way he looked when he thought no one was watching, the exhaustion in the set of his shoulders, the way he rubbed his eyes when a spreadsheet wouldn't cooperate, the small smile that flickered across his face every time his phone buzzed with what was clearly a text from his daughter. You're staring, Marcus said one afternoon, appearing at her office door with his usual terrible timing. Claire didn't look away from the window that overlooked the bullpen where Daniel sat. I'm observing. That's what we're calling it? I'm ensuring my investment is performing adequately. Your investment just landed 3 new clients in Denver. I'd say he's performing better than adequately. Claire finally turned from the window. 3 clients isn't a trend, it's a start. It's more than James managed in 6 months. Marcus settled into the chair across from her desk. The team in Denver loves him. They say he actually listens when they talk, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. Novel concept in corporate America. Don't get attached, Claire said. 6 months, that was the deal. I'm not the one you need to warn. Claire's eyes narrowed. Meaning you've checked his quarterly reports 4 times this week, and we're only on Tuesday. Meaning you personally approved his request for updated software when you usually delegate that to department heads. Meaning I'm doing my job as CEO. Next topic. Marcus raised his hands in surrender, but his knowing smile lingered. Claire resisted the urge to throw something at him. The breaking point came 6 weeks into Daniel's tenure, on a Thursday night when the October sky had turned the particular shade of dark that made Manhattan's lights seem brighter, sharper, more alive. Claire was working late, no surprise there, when she heard voices from the conference room. She checked her watch. 9:17 p.m. The building should have been nearly empty except for the overnight security team and the handful of workaholics who, like Claire, had nowhere better to be. She walked toward those voices, her heels muffled by the hallway carpet, and stopped outside conference room B. Daniel's voice carried through the half-open door, patient and steady. No, look at column E again. See how the projection changes when you factor in seasonal variation? But that makes the Q4 numbers look worse. A woman's voice, Jennifer Howe, one of the junior analysts. It makes them accurate, Daniel corrected gently. We're not here to make numbers look good. We're here to understand what they're actually telling us, so we can make smart decisions. Claire pushed the door open. Daniel and Jennifer both looked up, startled. The conference table was covered in printouts and laptops, coffee cups forming rings on the polished wood. Jennifer looked guilty, like a student caught studying past curfew. Daniel just looked tired. Ms. Whitmore, he said, standing automatically, I didn't realize you were still here. I could say the same. It's after 9. We're just finishing the revenue projections for Denver's Q1 strategy. Jennifer's been helping me understand the regional variation modeling. Jennifer gathered her things quickly. I should go. My boyfriend's probably wondering where I am. You don't have to leave, Claire said, but Jennifer was already halfway to the door. No, really, it's fine. Thank you for the lesson, Mr. Reyes. See you tomorrow, Miss Whitmore. She vanished, leaving Claire and Daniel alone in the too bright fluorescent lighting. You're teaching analysts now? Claire asked, moving into the room. She asked for help. I had time. You bill hourly. This isn't billable time. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. She's a good kid trying to learn. Not everything has to be transactional. The mild rebuke landed harder than it should have. Claire felt her defenses rise automatically. In business, everything is transactional. The sooner people learn that, the better. Is that what you believe, or what you tell yourself to justify staying here until midnight every night? The question cut through Claire's composure like a blade through silk. For a moment, she couldn't speak. No one talked to her like that. Not Marcus, not the board, certainly not an employee 6 weeks into his probationary period. Excuse me? Her voice dropped to the dangerous quiet that usually made grown men backtrack. Daniel didn't backtrack. He met her gaze evenly, no apology in his expression. You hired me because you said you refused to become the people who told you that you weren't ready. But you're in here every night until the building closes, you eat lunch at your desk, and I've never seen you take a personal call. If this is what success looks like, Ms. Whitmore, I'm not sure I want it. You don't have the luxury of wanting or not wanting it, Claire shot back. You have a daughter depending on you to make this work. You think I don't know what that pressure feels like? I built this company from nothing. I know exactly what sacrifice means. I know you do. That's why I took this job. Daniel's voice softened slightly. But I also know what it cost you. I can see it. Everyone can. Claire felt something crack inside her, a fracture in the armor she'd spent a decade building. You don't know anything about me. I know you spilled coffee on a stranger at an airport, and your first instinct was to blame him instead of apologizing. I know you hired me anyway, which means somewhere under all this, he gestured vaguely at the office around them. You remember what it's like to need someone to take a chance on you, and I know that scares you more than any board meeting ever could. The silence that followed was massive, crushing. Claire could hear her own heartbeat, could feel heat rising in her face, anger or embarrassment, or something else she refused to name. Get out, she said quietly. Daniel held her gaze for another moment, then nodded. He gathered his papers with careful precision, closed his laptop, and headed for the door. He paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, I hope you figure out what you're actually working toward, because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like running away. He left. Claire stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by empty coffee cups and financial projections that suddenly seemed utterly meaningless. She didn't cry. Claire Whitmore didn't cry, but she sat down in the nearest chair and stared at the wall until the numbers on the digital clock blurred together. And when she finally left the building at midnight, the security guard asked if she was okay. I'm fine, she said automatically. She wasn't fine. The next morning, Claire arrived at the office at her usual 6:30 a.m., determined to pretend the previous night had never happened. She had emails to answer, reports to review, a conference call with London at 8. She didn't have time for emotions or self-reflection or whatever Daniel Reyes thought she needed. She made it until 10:15 before Julie knocked on her door. "You have a visitor." Claire didn't look up from her laptop. "I don't have any appointments until 11. "It's Mr. Reyes. He says it's important." Claire's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Tell him to schedule time through the proper channels." "He said you'd say that. He also said to tell you he's sorry and he brought coffee." Despite herself, Claire felt a flicker of curiosity. "What kind of coffee?" "The good kind. From that place on 47th you like but never have time to go to." Claire closed her laptop. 5 minutes. Daniel entered carrying 2 cups from Grayson's, the artisanal coffee shop that charged $9 for a cappuccino and was absolutely worth it. He set one on her desk, caramel macchiato, her favorite. How did he know that? And kept the other for himself. "I was out of line last night," he said without preamble. "You're my boss. What you do with your personal time is none of my business, and I had no right to comment on it. I apologize." Claire studied him. He looked sincere, but there was something else there too, a stubborn set to his jaw that suggested he wasn't apologizing for the content of what he'd said, only the way he'd said it. "Apology accepted," she said carefully. She took a sip of the macchiato. Perfect temperature, perfect sweetness. "How did you know what I drink?" "Julie mentioned it." "I hope that's not crossing a line." "It's coffee, Mr. Reyes, not a background check." A small smile flickered across his face. "Then we're okay?" "We're professional. That's what we need to be." The smile faded. "Right, professional." He turned to leave, and Claire heard herself speak before her brain could stop her. "Daniel." He turned back, surprise evident at her use of his first name. "You weren't entirely wrong," she said quietly. "About last night, I work a lot. It's how I'm built." "I know. I wasn't judging you for working hard. I was judging myself for starting to do the same thing. Lily asked me last night why I'm always tired, and I didn't have a good answer." "What did you tell her?" "That Daddy has an important job, and sometimes important jobs are hard. But she's 5. She doesn't care about important jobs. She just wants me to read her bedtime stories without falling asleep halfway through." The vulnerability in his voice made something twist in Claire's chest. She thought about her own father, a corporate lawyer who'd missed every dance recital and parent-teacher conference, who'd been present in body but absent in every way that mattered. She'd sworn she'd never become him. Somewhere along the way, she had anyway. "Go home early tonight," Claire said impulsively. "Read her the whole story." "I have the Denver presentation. It can wait until Monday. You're ahead of schedule anyway." Daniel stared at her like she'd suggested he sprout wings and fly. "Are you sure?" "I don't say things I don't mean. Go home." "That's an order from your boss if you need the professional justification." This time his smile was genuine, warm, and it did something dangerous to Claire's carefully maintained composure. "Thank you," he said. "Really?" After he left, Claire sat with her macchiato and wondered when she'd started caring whether Daniel Reyes got to read his daughter bedtime stories. The answer scared her more than she wanted to admit. November arrived with the first real cold, the kind that made Manhattan feel sharper, harder, less forgiving. Daniel's probation period was halfway over, and the results were undeniable. Denver's revenue had increased by 12%, not quite the 15% target, but impressive given the time frame. Client satisfaction scores were up. The regional team's morale had improved so dramatically that HR asked Daniel to speak at the company-wide town hall about team management. Claire watched from the back of the auditorium as he stood on stage, slightly uncomfortable in the spotlight, but earnest in a way that made people listen. He talked about respect, about treating people like they had lives outside the office, about the difference between demanding excellence and demanding sacrifice. "I used to think success meant working until you couldn't work anymore," Daniel said, his voice carrying through the sound system. "But I was wrong. Success means building something sustainable, something that doesn't require you to destroy yourself to maintain. If we're not creating that here, we're not creating anything worth keeping." The applause was thunderous. Claire slipped out before anyone could see the expression on her face. That night, she worked until 11 p.m., then went home to her empty penthouse and poured a glass of wine she didn't drink. She stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city that had once felt like conquest and now felt like a cage. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for letting me leave early last week. Lily loved the extra time. Thought you should know it mattered. Claire stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that one too. Finally, she settled on, "You're welcome." His response came immediately. "Still at the office? Home. You? Same. Lily's asleep. Too wired to sleep myself. Denver numbers are good, but not great. Working on Q1 strategy." Claire's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every professional instinct screamed at her to end the conversation, to maintain boundaries, to remember that this was her employee, not her friend. She typed anyway. "Send me what you have. 2 heads are better than 1. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Are you sure? It's late. I'm already awake." 20 minutes later, her email pinged with Daniel's preliminary Q1 strategy. Claire opened it, made notes in the margins, sent it back with comments. He responded with questions. She answered with data. He challenged her assumptions. She pushed back with market research. At 1:30 a.m., Claire looked up from her laptop and realized she was smiling. At 1:47 a.m., Daniel sent a message that wasn't about business. "Can I ask you something personal?" Claire's smile faded. She should say no, should close her laptop and go to bed and remember that this was exactly how lines got blurred and complications began. "You can ask, why do you do this? Not the company, I understand ambition, but why do you do it alone?" The question hit like a physical blow. Claire sat with it for a long time, watching the cursor blink on her screen. Because alone is safer. Because people leave or disappoint you or die. And if you never let them in, they can't destroy you when they go. She hit send before she could reconsider. The honesty of it made her feel stripped, vulnerable in a way she hated. Daniel's response came 5 minutes later. "I'm sorry someone made you believe that. Multiple someones. Comes with the territory. It doesn't have to." Claire closed her laptop without responding. She went to bed and didn't sleep, and in the morning she pretended the conversation had never happened. But something had shifted. Some wall had developed a crack, and no matter how hard Claire tried to ignore it, the crack kept growing. December brought chaos. One of Whitmore Solutions' largest clients, a financial services firm that represented 8% of annual revenue, threatened to walk. They wanted features the software didn't have, they wanted them immediately, and they wanted them at a discount because loyalty should count for something. Claire spent 3 days in emergency meetings, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee, and the kind of cold fury that had built her empire. On the 4th day, she snapped at Marcus during a strategy session. He snapped back. They had a screaming match in her office that ended with Marcus slamming the door and Claire throwing a stapler at the wall. She stood there breathing hard, her hands shaking, and realized she was losing control. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. She turned to find Daniel standing in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "Not now," she said. "I brought lunch. Thai from that place you mentioned liking. I'm not hungry." Claire. The use of her first name stopped her. "Sit down, eat. 5 minutes." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she was fine, that she didn't need taking care of, that this was none of his concern. Instead, she sat. Daniel unpacked containers of pad thai and curry, set out chopsticks, poured her the tea that came with the order. He didn't try to talk about business or offer solutions or do anything except sit across from her and eat in companionable silence. After 10 minutes, Claire spoke. "I'm going to lose them. The client. They want things I can't give them, not in the timeline they're demanding. So tell them no." "And lose 8% of revenue? The board will crucify me." "The board will crucify you anyway. At least this way you keep your integrity." Claire laughed, bitter and sharp. "Integrity doesn't pay salaries." "No, but fear-based decision-making destroys companies from the inside out. I've watched it happen. Sometimes the brave choice is walking away. That's easy to say when it's not your company on the line." Daniel set down his chopsticks. "You hired me because I understand failure. Let me tell you what I learned from it. The clients you twist yourself into knots for, the ones who demand you sacrifice your values to keep them happy, those are the ones who'll leave anyway the moment someone offers them a better deal. But the clients you treat with honesty, even when it costs you, those are the ones who stick around. Not all of them, but the right ones." Claire stared at him. You're telling me to let 8% of my revenue walk. I'm telling you that some prices are too high to pay, even for success. She wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the reasons he was wrong, naive, too inexperienced to understand the realities of corporate warfare. Instead, she found herself nodding. Okay. I'll tell them no. I'll offer what we can do, but I won't promise miracles we can't deliver. Daniel smiled, and Claire felt that dangerous warmth bloom in her chest again. Thank you for lunch, she said quietly. Any time. He left, taking the empty containers with him. Claire sat alone in her office and made the call that might cost her everything. The client's CEO listened to her counterproposal, said he'd consider it, and hung up without commitment. 2 days later, they signed a modified contract. Not perfect, but honest. Sustainable. Marcus appeared in Claire's office with a bottle of champagne. I heard. You did it. We did it. No. Marcus popped the cork. You did. And for the record, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry I threw a stapler at the wall. You threw a stapler? Missed you by 3 feet. I have terrible aim when I'm angry. They drank champagne straight from the bottle, laughing like they hadn't in months. And Claire realized she hadn't told Marcus that Daniel had been the one to talk her off the ledge. Some things, she was learning, didn't need to be shared. Some things could stay private, held close, precious in their smallness. That night, Daniel texted her. Heard about the client. Well done. Team effort. Still. You could have caved. You didn't. That takes guts. Claire stared at the message, warmth spreading through her chest. Someone reminded me that integrity matters, even when it's expensive. Smart someone, arrogant someone, but occasionally useful. His response was a laughing emoji, the first time he'd ever sent her anything that wasn't strictly professional. Claire smiled at her phone like a teenager, and when she caught her reflection in the dark window, she barely recognized the woman smiling back. The week before Christmas, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call at 6:42 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Claire was already at her desk reviewing Denver's Q4 numbers, which had finally hit the 15% growth target with 2 weeks to spare, when her phone lit up with an unknown number from Los Angeles. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. Claire Whitmore. Ms. Whitmore, this is Richard Chen from Apex Digital Solutions. The voice was smooth, confident, and vaguely familiar in the way all corporate raiders sounded the same. I apologize for the early call, but I wanted to reach you before things get complicated. Claire's instincts went on high alert. Complicated how? We're preparing a takeover bid for Whitmore Solutions. Friendly, if possible. We're offering $420 million, all cash with full retention of current leadership, if you'd like to stay on as... No. A pause. Ms. Whitmore, I don't think you understand the... I understand perfectly. My company isn't for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Have a nice day, Mr. Chen. She hung up before he could respond, her hand trembling slightly. $420 million. It was more money than she'd ever imagined, enough to retire at 34 and never work another day in her life. Enough to prove every investor who'd rejected her wrong, to shove success in the face of everyone who'd said she'd fail. It was also a cage disguised as a golden parachute. Her phone rang again immediately. This time it was Marcus. Tell me you didn't just hang up on Apex Digital. How did you? Because Richard Chen called me 2 minutes after he called you, asking if you were always this unreasonable. Claire, do you have any idea what they're offering? I know exactly what they're offering, and I'm not interested. You need to at least hear them out. The board works for me, not the other way around. That's not how this works anymore. You went public 2 years ago, remember? You have shareholders now, fiduciary duty. If Apex makes a formal offer, you can't just ignore it because you don't feel like selling. Claire closed her eyes, pressing her fingers against her temple where a headache was already forming. Set up a meeting, Friday. But I'm telling you right now, Marcus, I'm voting no. Your vote isn't the only one that matters. The call ended. Claire sat in the silence of her office, watching the winter sun rise over Manhattan, and felt the walls closing in. By noon, news of the potential takeover had leaked. By 2 p.m., it was on TechCrunch. By 4 p.m., Claire's inbox was flooded with calls from investors, board members, and journalists all wanting to know the same thing. Was she really going to turn down the deal of a lifetime? She ignored all of them and went looking for Daniel. She found him in conference room C, standing in front of a whiteboard covered in his distinctive scrawl: market projections, client timelines, revenue models. He was explaining something to two members of the Denver team via video conference. His tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, that same focused intensity he brought to everything. Claire waited in the doorway until he noticed her. When he did, something in her expression made him cut the meeting short. "We'll pick this up tomorrow," he told the screen, then closed the laptop and turned to face her. "What happened? How do you know something happened?" "Because you look like you want to set something on fire, and you're here instead of in your office doing it. What's wrong?" Claire closed the door behind her. "Apex Digital wants to buy the company. $420 million. The board is pushing me to take the meeting." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" "I want to tell them all to go to hell. I built this company from nothing. It's mine." "Is it?" The question stopped her cold. "What? Is it yours? Or does it belong to the shareholders, the employees, the clients who depend on it? If someone offers to buy my house, I can say no, because it's just my house. But a company this size, it's not just yours anymore, Claire. It affects a lot of people." "So you think I should sell?" The words came out flat, defeated. "I didn't say that. I'm saying you need to figure out what you're actually protecting. Are you protecting the company, or are you protecting your identity as the person who built it?" Claire wanted to snap at him, to defend herself, to explain all the reasons he was wrong. Instead, she sank into one of the conference room chairs. "I don't know how to be anyone else," she admitted quietly. "This company is everything I am. If I sell it, what's left?" Daniel moved to the chair beside her, not across from her. The subtle shift in position felt significant somehow. "What about the person who spends 30 minutes arguing with me about market strategy over text at midnight? What about the person who let me leave early to read my daughter bedtime stories? What about the person who told a client no when everyone else would have said yes? That's still the CEO. No, that's Claire. The CEO is what you do. Claire is who you are. And from what I've seen, she's pretty remarkable even without the business card." Something cracked in Claire's chest. A fissure that had been forming for months finally breaking open. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw not an employee or a project or a calculated risk. She saw someone who'd somehow slipped past every defense she'd built, who'd found the person she'd buried under ambition and armor and the desperate need to prove herself. "I'm scared," she whispered. "If I sell, I'm admitting that I can't take it any further. If I don't sell and we fail, I've destroyed something that could have been worth millions. Either way, I lose." "Then make a third choice. The board meeting isn't until Friday, right?" "Right. So take 2 days to figure out what winning actually looks like. Not for the CEO, for Claire." He stood, gathering his laptop and notes. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, I hope you don't sell. I just started figuring out how to do this job. Be ashamed to have to start over somewhere else." After he left, Claire sat alone in the conference room and cried for the first time in 5 years. The board meeting on Friday was everything Claire had been dreading. They gathered in the largest conference room on the 23rd floor, all 9 board members, plus Marcus and the company's legal counsel. Apex Digital had sent their acquisition team, Richard Chen and 3 attorneys who looked like they charged $1,000 an hour and were worth every penny. Margaret Castellano sat at the head of the table, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her expression neutral in that dangerous way that meant she was calculating. Claire took her seat directly across from her, refusing to flinch. "Let's begin," Margaret said. "Mr. Chen, please present your offer." A Richard Chen was exactly what Claire had expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of practiced charm that came from closing billion-dollar deals. He slid folders across the table to each board member and launched into a presentation that was simultaneously impressive and insulting. Apex Digital wanted to acquire Whitmore Solutions for $420 million. They'd retain the Whitmore Solutions name and brand for 3 years. Claire would stay on as a strategic advisor for 18 months with a 7-figure salary. Current employees would keep their positions for at least 1 year, with generous severance packages available after that. "It's a win for everyone," Richard concluded, his smile bright and empty. Whitmore Solutions gets the capital and resources to expand globally. Apex gets a foothold in the enterprise software market. And Ms. Whitmore gets to walk away knowing she built something worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The room was silent for a beat. Then Margaret spoke. What happens after 3 years? To the brand? That would depend on market performance, but realistically, we'd likely fold it into the Apex digital portfolio under a unified brand strategy. So you'd erase it, Claire said quietly. Richard's smile didn't waver. We'd integrate it. That's how modern acquisitions work. And the Denver office, the regional expansion strategy? We'd evaluate all regional operations for efficiency. Some locations might be consolidated. Consolidated means closed. It means optimized, Ms. Whitmore. We're not in the business of running unprofitable offices out of sentiment. Claire's hands clenched under the table. She looked at Marcus, who was staring at the folder in front of him with an expression she couldn't read. She looked at Margaret, who was watching her with something that might have been pity. The offer is generous, Margaret said carefully. More than generous, given current market conditions. I think we need to seriously consider it. I vote no. Every head in the room turned toward Claire. Margaret's expression hardened. Claire, you haven't even heard the full proposal. I don't need to. This company isn't about optimization or brand integration or global expansion strategies. It's about building something that lasts, something that treats people like they matter, not like they're line items on a spreadsheet waiting to be consolidated. That's romantic thinking, one of the other board members said. Gerald Hoffman, a venture capitalist who'd been skeptical of Claire from the beginning. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. We can't turn down an offer like this based on feelings. I'm not talking about feelings. I'm talking about vision. Apex wants to buy us because we've built something valuable. But the moment we sell, that value disappears. We become just another acquisition, just another company that got absorbed because the founders couldn't see it through. Richard Chen leaned forward, his smile fading. Ms. Whitmore, I understand attachment to one's creation, but the market moves on. You can either move with it or get left behind. Then I'll get left behind doing things my way instead of selling out to do them yours. Claire, Margaret's voice was sharp now, this is not a dictatorship. The board has a right to vote on major decisions, and this is as major as they come. I'm calling for a formal vote. All in favor of accepting Apex Digital's acquisition offer? 4 hands went up. Margaret's, Gerald's, 2 others, board members who'd always been lukewarm on Claire's leadership. All opposed? Claire's hand went up immediately. Marcus's followed after a beat that felt like an eternity. 2 other board members raised their hands, younger members who'd made their money in tech and still remembered what it was like to build something from nothing. 4-4. A tie. Margaret smiled, but there was no warmth in it. In case of a tie, as board chair, I cast the deciding vote. I vote yes. Motion carries. We accept Apex Digital's offer pending final negotiations. The room erupted. Marcus was on his feet, arguing. 2 of the opposing board members were demanding a recount. Richard Chen was already shaking Margaret's hand, victory bright in his eyes. Claire stood slowly, the world seeming to move in slow motion around her. She looked at Margaret, at the woman who'd been waiting 3 years for this moment, who'd finally found a way to take back the company Claire had stolen from her. This isn't over, Claire said quietly. Margaret's smile widened. Yes, it is. The vote was legal and binding. Apex's attorneys will draw up the final paperwork. You can stay on as an advisor, or you can walk away with your share of the sale. Either way, Whitmore Solutions is no longer yours to control. Claire walked out of the conference room and kept walking, past her office, past Julie's concerned questions, past the elevators. She took the stairs, all 23 flights, and burst out into the December cold without a coat. She made it 2 blocks before her phone rang. Marcus. Claire, where are you? Walking. In 20-degree weather without a jacket? Come back. We need to talk strategy. There might be a way to challenge the vote. Let it go, Marcus. What? I'm done fighting. Margaret won. She always wins. Claire, listen to me. She hung up, kept walking. Her phone rang again and again, but she ignored it. She walked through Midtown, through Times Square with its screaming advertisements and tourist crowds, through the theater district where marquees advertised shows she'd never seen. She walked until her fingers went numb, and her ears ached from cold. And when she finally stopped, she found herself standing outside a small coffee shop in Hell's Kitchen. Through the window, she could see families laughing, couples sharing desserts, a little girl with her father coloring on paper placemats. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "I heard. I'm sorry." She stared at the message, her vision blurring. She should go home, should call her lawyer, should start planning her next move, should do any of the 1,000 things a CEO facing a hostile takeover should do. Instead, she typed back, "Where are you?" "Home. Lily's at a friend's house for a sleepover. Why? What's your address?" A pause. Then he sent it. Claire caught a cab heading downtown, and she didn't let herself think about what she was doing until she was standing in front of a modest apartment building in Brooklyn, her finger hovering over the buzzer for Unit 4B. She pressed it before courage could fail her. Daniel's voice crackled through the intercom. "Hello? It's me." A beat of silence. Then the door buzzed open. She climbed 4 flights of stairs. Apparently both she and Daniel had a thing about avoiding elevators when stressed, and found him waiting in the hallway. He changed out of his work clothes into jeans and a worn Columbia t-shirt, his hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. "What are you doing here?" he asked, not unkindly. "I don't know. I was walking, and I couldn't go home. I couldn't be alone." He studied her for a moment, then stepped back and opened his apartment door wider. "Come in." The apartment was small but clean, decorated in the haphazard way of someone who'd furnished it from secondhand stores in necessity rather than design. A worn couch faced a modest TV. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Lily's toys were organized in bins along one wall, and a photo of a dark-haired woman, Daniel's wife, Claire realized with a sharp pang, sat on the bookshelf. "Sit," Daniel said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll make tea." "You don't have to—" "Claire, sit." She sat, watched him move through the tiny kitchen with practiced efficiency, heating water, finding mugs, measuring out tea leaves. When he handed her a steaming cup, their fingers brushed, and Claire felt the contact like electricity. "Do you want to talk about it?" Daniel asked, settling into the opposite end of the couch. "Margaret sold me out. She's been planning this since I took over, probably, waiting for the right moment to take the company back, and I handed it to her." "You didn't hand her anything. You took a vote. That's how boards work. I built this company. Every line of code, every contract, every late night and missed meal and relationship I destroyed because work came first. And she just took it with one vote. So take it back." Claire looked up, startled. "What?" "You're Claire Whitmore. You don't give up when someone tells you no. You find another way." "There is no other way. The vote was binding." "Then make it not binding. Find a loophole, challenge the procedure, buy out dissenting board members, offer a counterbid that makes Apexes look pathetic. I don't know the specifics because I'm not a corporate attorney, but I know you, and the Claire I know, doesn't walk away from a fight just because the first round went badly." Something sparked in Claire's chest. Not quite hope, but the ember that could become it. "Apex is offering $420 million. I can't match that." "Can't you? You have investors who believe in you. You have 3 years of explosive growth. You have a company worth fighting for. Make them see it." Claire set down her tea and pressed her hands against her face. "Why do you believe in me so much? You barely know me. I know you hired me when no one else would. I know you defended me to your board. I know you work yourself to exhaustion because you care about what you're building, not just because you want to win. And I know that if you walk away from this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." She looked at him through her fingers, this man who'd somehow become the voice of her conscience, the mirror that reflected back who she wanted to be, instead of who she feared she'd become. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Good. Scared means it matters." He shifted closer, just an inch, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with something neither of them could name. "Daniel, I know. I'm your employee. This is inappropriate. There are a dozen HR policies about why this is a terrible idea." "Then why aren't you moving away?" "Because you came here, Claire. You could have gone anywhere, called anyone. But you came to me." The truth of it hung between them like a live wire. Claire knew she should leave. should put distance between them before something happened that couldn't be undone. Instead, she found herself leaning forward. "This is a mistake," she said. "Probably. It'll complicate everything. Definitely. We should—" He kissed her. It was nothing like Claire had imagined, and she had imagined it, late at night when she couldn't sleep, in quiet moments between meetings when she caught herself watching him work. She'd imagined something careful, tentative, testing boundaries. This wasn't that. This was desperate and honest and terrifying in its intensity. Daniel kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning, like she was the answer to a question he'd been too afraid to ask. Claire kissed back with all the emotion she'd been holding at bay for months, the fear and attraction and desperate need to be seen by someone who actually understood. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Claire's hands were fisted in his shirt and his fingers were tangled in her hair. "That was," she started. "Yeah. We can't—" "I know." Neither of them moved away. "I should go," Claire said, not meaning it. "You should." "Daniel, stay." The word was soft, almost a question. "Just for tonight. No expectations, no promises. Just stay, because the alternative is going back to that empty penthouse and pretending you're okay when we both know you're not." Claire knew all the reasons she should refuse, knew this was crossing every line she'd drawn, breaking every rule she'd made. But she was so tired of being strong, of being alone, of pretending she didn't need anyone. "Okay," she whispered. They didn't have sex. They didn't even kiss again. Instead, they sat on Daniel's worn couch and talked until 3 a.m. about everything and nothing, about his wife and how he'd loved her, about Claire's father and why she'd never felt good enough, about Lily's first word and Claire's first failed pitch to investors. They talked until words gave way to comfortable silence, and Claire fell asleep with her head on Daniel's shoulder while he ran his fingers through her hair and wondered what the hell they'd just started. When Claire woke just after dawn, winter light filtering through the apartment windows, Daniel was asleep beside her, his hand still resting on her arm. She should have felt panic, regret, all the complicated emotions that came with crossing professional boundaries. Instead, she felt quiet, peaceful. Like maybe, for the first time in years, she didn't have to carry everything alone. She extracted herself carefully, trying not to wake him. Found her phone on the coffee table, 17 missed calls, 43 texts, all variations of the same panic. She ignored them all and sent one message to Marcus. "Schedule an emergency board meeting. Monday morning. Tell them I'm making a counteroffer." His response came immediately. "You're going to fight? I'm going to win. Get me everything you have on acquisition law and shareholder rights. And call our legal team. We're going to war." She looked back at Daniel, still sleeping on the couch, and felt something shift in her chest. She'd spent 3 years building an empire alone, convinced that independence was strength and needing people was weakness. Maybe she'd been wrong about that too. Claire let herself out quietly, caught a cab back to Manhattan, and went to work. By the time Marcus arrived at Claire's office at 7 a.m. Monday morning, she'd already been working for 3 hours. Her desk was buried under printouts, corporate bylaws, shareholder agreements, acquisition precedents, every legal document that might contain a thread she could pull to unravel Margaret's victory. Her eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep and too much coffee, but her hands were steady as she highlighted another section of text. Marcus took one look at her and set down a bag from the deli across the street. "Eat. You look like death." "Good morning to you too." "I'm serious, Claire. When's the last time you slept?" "Friday night." She didn't mention where. Didn't mention waking up on Daniel's couch with his shirt collar still wrinkled from her grip, or the way her chest had ached when she left. That was private, sacred in its fragility. Marcus unpacked a bagel and pushed it toward her. "The board meeting is in 2 hours. Please tell me you have an actual strategy and not just righteous anger." Claire took a bite of the bagel to appease him, then slid a folder across the desk. "Section 7.3 of our corporate bylaws. Any acquisition over $200 million requires a supermajority vote, 6 out of 9 board members. Friday's vote was 4-4 with Margaret's tiebreaker. That's not a supermajority." Marcus grabbed the folder and scanned it, his eyes widening. "How did our lawyers miss this?" "Because Margaret's lawyers drafted the meeting agenda and nobody questioned it. She was counting on me being too emotional to think clearly." Claire's smile was sharp as broken glass. She miscalculated. So the vote is invalid. Technically, but Margaret will argue that her tiebreaker constitutes a supermajority under chair privileges. We'll need to challenge that interpretation. And if we win, then we revote. And this time, I'll be ready. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her. What changed? Friday you were ready to walk away. Now you're quoting corporate bylaws at 7 in the morning. Claire thought about Daniel's apartment, about the way he'd looked at her like she was worth fighting for even when she didn't believe it herself, about the quiet conviction in his voice when he'd said, "Take it back." "Someone reminded me who I am," she said simply. "Now help me prove it." The emergency board meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp in the same conference room where Claire had lost everything 3 days earlier. This time, she'd brought reinforcements. Her lead attorney, Patricia Huang, sat at her right hand with 3 associates flanking her. Marcus had printed and distributed copies of the relevant bylaws to every board member, and Claire had spent the weekend calling in every favor, making every promise, and leveraging every relationship she'd built in 3 years of ruthless networking. Margaret entered last, her expression carefully neutral, but Claire saw the flicker of uncertainty when she noticed Patricia. "This is highly irregular," Margaret said, taking her seat. "The vote on Friday was final and binding." "Actually," Patricia said, her voice calm and precise, "it wasn't." Section 7. 3 of Whitmore Solutions' corporate bylaws clearly states that any acquisition or merger exceeding $200 million requires approval by a supermajority of the board, specifically 6 out of 9 voting members. Friday's vote was 4-4 with a tiebreaker, which does not constitute a supermajority under any legal interpretation. The room went silent. Gerald Hoffman flipped through his copy of the bylaws, his face reddening. 2 other board members were already whispering to each other. Margaret's expression didn't change. As board chair, my tie-breaking vote carries the weight necessary to— "No, it doesn't." Patricia slid a document across the table. "I've prepared a legal opinion from 3 independent corporate law firms, all confirming that chair tiebreakers do not satisfy supermajority requirements. Friday's vote is invalid. If you'd like to challenge this interpretation, we can spend the next 6 months in litigation while Apex Digital's offer expires, or we can acknowledge the error and revote today." Margaret's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "This is a waste of time. The outcome will be the same." "Then you should have no objection to following proper procedure," Claire said quietly. For a long moment, Margaret held her gaze. Then she looked at her own lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who'd been frantically typing on his laptop. He whispered something in her ear. Margaret's expression went flat. "Fine," she said. "We'll revote. But first, Ms. Whitmore, you mentioned a counteroffer?" This was it. Claire's last chance to prove that fighting was worth it. She stood, moving to the head of the table, where a presentation waited on the mounted screen. She'd spent all of Sunday building it, every slide a weapon, every data point a declaration of war. Apex Digital is offering $420 million for a company they want to dismantle and absorb, Claire began. "I'm offering something different, a path forward that preserves what we've built while giving shareholders the return they deserve." She clicked to the first slide. Whitmore Solutions' growth trajectory over the past 3 years. The line climbed steadily upward, with a sharp spike in the past 6 months. We've grown revenue by 43% year over year. Client retention is at 92%, highest in our sector. Our Denver expansion, which many of you initially opposed, has exceeded projections by 18%. We're not a struggling company looking for a buyout. We're a rocket ship that's just started to climb. Next slide. A comparison chart showing Apex Digital's acquisition history. Apex has acquired 16 companies in the past 5 years. Of those 16, 12 have been fully absorbed within 18 months, their brands erased, their teams gutted. The remaining 4 exist as hollow shells, kept alive just long enough to extract value before being quietly shut down. Is that what you want for Whitmore Solutions? To become acquisition number 17? She saw a few board members shift uncomfortably. Good. Here's what I'm proposing instead. We bring in a strategic partner, not a buyer, but an investor. I've been in talks with Redwood Capital. They're offering a $200 million investment for 25% equity. That gives us the capital to expand globally while maintaining control of our vision and direction. Shareholders get immediate value through the equity appreciation, and we keep building. Gerald Hoffman leaned forward. Redwood Capital, they're vultures. They'll demand board seats and voting rights. They'll get 2 board seats and advisory voting rights only. I've already negotiated the terms. Claire clicked to the next slide. The proposed deal structure. This isn't about giving up control, it's about strategic partnership with people who share our vision. And what makes you think your vision is more valuable than $420 million in cash? Margaret's voice was ice. Claire met her gaze steadily. Because 5 years from now, if we take Apex's offer, Whitmore Solutions won't exist. It'll be a footnote in some quarterly earnings report. But if we take Redwood's investment and continue on our current trajectory, we'll be worth $1 billion, maybe more, and we'll have built it ourselves. She clicked to the final slide, a projection model showing 2 paths, the Apex acquisition and its guaranteed but terminal payout versus the Redwood partnership and its exponential but riskier growth potential. I know which path I choose, Claire said quietly. The question is whether you have the courage to choose it with me. The room fell silent. Claire could hear her own heartbeat, could feel sweat gathering at the small of her back despite the climate control. Everything she'd built, everything she was, balanced on this moment. Margaret spoke first. This is fantasy. Pretty projections and inspirational speeches don't change market realities. Apex's offer is guaranteed money. Your proposal is risk based on optimism and ego. It's risk based on data and proven performance, Marcus interjected. Every projection in that model is conservative compared to our actual growth rate. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results, Gerald said. We all know that. No, but leadership does. The voice came from the far end of the table. David Park, the youngest board member and the one who'd voted with Claire on Friday. Claire's leadership has taken this company places none of us thought possible. I'm inclined to trust her vision over a corporate raider's promises. I second that, said another voice. Jennifer Walsh, a former tech CEO who joined the board last year. Apex's track record speaks for itself. They destroy everything they touch. Margaret's expression remained neutral, but Claire saw the calculation in her eyes. She was counting votes, running scenarios, looking for the angle that would let her win. Let's vote, Margaret said abruptly. All in favor of accepting Apex Digital's acquisition offer? 4 hands went up, the same 4 from Friday. All opposed? Claire's hand rose, followed by Marcus's proxy vote, David's, Jennifer's, and Claire's heart nearly stopped. Gerald Hoffman's. 5-4. Claire won. Margaret stared at Gerald in disbelief. You're voting against a guaranteed return? I'm voting for a better one, Gerald said gruffly. I didn't invest in Whitmore Solutions to watch it get absorbed by Apex. I invested because Claire Whitmore has better instincts than anyone I've ever met. She's earned the right to see this through. The words landed like a benediction. Claire felt something crack open in her chest. Not victory, not yet, but the first breath after drowning. The motion fails, Patricia said formally. Apex Digital's offer is rejected. Ms. Whitmore, you're authorized to proceed with negotiations with Redwood Capital. Margaret stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is a mistake. You're all gambling the company on sentiment and faith instead of hard business sense. When it fails, and it will fail, remember that I tried to save you from yourselves. She walked out without waiting for a response. 2 of her allied board members followed. The remaining members sat in stunned silence. Then David started clapping. Jennifer joined in. Gerald nodded once, gruff approval in his eyes. Marcus was grinning like a maniac. Claire stood at the head of the table, surrounded by the people who'd chosen to believe in her, and felt tears threatening for the second time in 3 days. Thank you, she managed. All of you. I won't let you down. You never have, David said. Now go build us that billion-dollar company. After the room cleared, Marcus lingered. He waited until they were alone, then pulled Claire into a brief, fierce hug. You did it, he said. You actually did it. We did it. No, this was all you. He pulled back, studying her face. Whatever happened this weekend, whoever talked you into fighting, remind me to send them a thank you gift. Claire thought about Daniel's apartment, about the way he'd kissed her like she mattered more than any corporate title. I don't think he's really a gift basket kind of person. Marcus's eyebrows rose. He? Don't. I'm not saying anything. I'm just noticing that you spent the weekend offline and came back ready to declare war, and now you're blushing like a teenager. But sure, I'm not saying anything. Marcus, whatever it is, whoever it is, I'm happy for you, Claire. You deserve something in your life besides spreadsheets and board meetings. He left before she could respond. Claire stood alone in the conference room where she'd almost lost everything and let herself feel the full weight of what she'd just saved. Then she pulled out her phone and texted Daniel. I won. His response came immediately. I never doubted it. Congratulations. Thank you. For Friday night. For believing in me. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, can we talk? Tonight? Claire's heart rate kicked up. Where? My place, at 7 p.m. Lily's at my sister's. We need to discuss what happens next. The formal phrasing didn't hide the weight of what he was really asking. They'd crossed a line Friday night, and now they had to decide what that meant for 2 people who technically existed in a professional hierarchy that made anything between them complicated at best and career-ending at worst. I'll be there, Claire typed. She spent the rest of the day in meetings, Redwood Capital's terms, legal reviews, press statements about the rejected acquisition. By the time she left the office at 6:30, exhaustion was pulling at her bones, but anxiety kept her wired. She took a cab to Brooklyn, stopped at a wine store for a bottle of something expensive she hoped wasn't trying too hard, and arrived at Daniel's building at exactly 7 p.m. He answered the door in jeans and a gray Henley, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes. He'd been cooking. Hi, he said, stepping back to let her in. Hi. They stood in his small living room, suddenly awkward in a way they'd never been before. All the easy professional rapport had evaporated, leaving something rawer, more dangerous in its place. I made pasta, Daniel said finally. Hope that's okay. I'm not much of a cook, but it's hard to screw up spaghetti. It's perfect. They ate at his small kitchen table, making careful small talk about the board meeting, about Denver's latest numbers, about everything except what they both knew they needed to discuss. When the plates were empty and the wine bottle half gone, Daniel finally broke. We need to talk about Friday night. Claire's stomach twisted. I know. I'm your employee. You're my boss. What we did, what we started, it's complicated. It doesn't have to be. We can just forget it happened. Maintain professional boundaries. Pretend. I don't want to pretend. Daniel interrupted quietly. That's the problem. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for months, and Friday night just made it worse because now I know what it feels like to have you that close, and I can't unknow it. Claire's breath caught. Daniel, let me finish, please. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd learned meant he was nervous. I know this is insane. I know I'm risking my job and your reputation and probably my daughter's stability because if this goes wrong, I'll have to quit and we'll have to move and it won't go wrong. He looked at her, hope and fear warring in his expression. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this too. I'm tired of being alone because it's safer. I'm tired of building empires and coming home to empty penthouses and convincing myself that success is enough. She reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers immediately, desperately. I don't know how to do this, Claire admitted. I don't know how to be someone's, whatever this is, and still be the CEO who has to make hard decisions. I don't know how to separate Claire from Ms. Whitmore when they've been the same person for so long. Then don't separate them. Be both. Be the CEO who fights for her company and the woman who lets herself be human sometimes. You don't have to choose. People will talk. They'll say I promoted you because they'll say I'm compromising the company for personal reasons. Are you? No, you earned your position. Denver's numbers prove that. Then let them talk. Anyone who matters will see the truth. Claire wanted to believe him, wanted to think it could be that simple, but she'd spent her entire adult life learning that nothing was ever simple, that vulnerability was weakness, that letting people in was the first step toward losing everything. What if I mess this up? She whispered. What if I'm so broken from building this company that I don't know how to be what you need? Daniel stood, pulling her up with him. His hands framed her face, gentle in a way that made her throat tight. "You're not broken, Claire. You're just scared. And that's okay. I'm scared too. I'm terrified that I'll fail you, that I won't be enough, that you'll wake up one day and realize you settled for a widower with a kid and a messy past when you could have had anyone. I don't want anyone. I want you." The words hung between them, simple and devastating in their honesty. Daniel's thumb traced her cheekbone, and Claire leaned into the touch like a plant toward sunlight. "Then have me," he said softly. "Have this. We'll figure out the rest as we go." This time when he kissed her, it wasn't desperate. It was certain, steady, like coming home to a place she'd never known she'd been searching for. Claire kissed him back and felt something shift in her chest. The wall she'd built around herself developing not just cracks but chasms, whole sections crumbling away to reveal the person she'd buried beneath ambition and armor. They made love on his couch like teenagers, fumbling and urgent and achingly tender. Afterward, Claire lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and felt more vulnerable than she'd ever been in any boardroom. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said into the quiet darkness. Claire tensed. "Okay." "I got a job offer last week, before the board meeting, from a company in Seattle. Good salary, closer to my family, stable future for Lily." Claire's heart stopped. "Are you taking it?" "I was going to. Before Friday night, before all of this, I'd pretty much decided that staying in New York was too hard. The cost of living, being away from my support system, the constant pressure of proving myself, it was wearing me down. And now? Now I'm choosing to stay. Not because the job is better or the money is right. Because you're here. Because whatever this is between us, it's worth the hard parts." Claire sat up, looking down at him in the dim light filtering through the windows. "You can't make that decision based on me. What if this doesn't work? What if... Then I'll deal with it. But Claire, I've already lost the love of my life once. I know what it feels like to not take a chance and spend the rest of your days wondering what if. I'm not doing that again." The words hit her like a physical blow, not painful but powerful, rearranging everything she thought she knew about risk and reward. "I don't know how to be someone's person," she admitted. "I don't know how to make space for this in my life." "Then we'll learn together. We'll make mistakes. We'll probably fight. We'll definitely drive each other crazy. But we'll do it honestly, without hiding or pretending we don't care." Claire thought about her empty penthouse, about all the nights she'd convinced herself that solitude was strength. She thought about the way Daniel looked at her, not at the CEO or the brand or the success story, but at Claire, messy and flawed and human. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, we try." Daniel pulled her back down against his chest, his arms wrapping around her like a promise. "We try." They fell asleep tangled together on his too small couch, and for the first time in years, Claire didn't dream about falling. The next 6 weeks were the hardest and best of Claire's life. The Redwood Capital deal closed just before Christmas, bringing an influx of cash and 2 new board members who asked hard questions but respected Claire's vision. Apex Digital's CEO sent a tersely worded congratulations that everyone recognized as barely veiled resentment. Margaret resigned from the board entirely, citing philosophical differences in a press release that fooled no one. Denver's Q4 numbers came in 23% above projections, making Daniel's expansion strategy the crown jewel of Whitmore Solutions' growth portfolio. He was promoted to VP of Regional Development with a salary increase that finally let him move to a better apartment and stop worrying about whether Lily's winter coat would last another season. And through it all, Claire and Daniel navigated the impossible balance of being colleagues and something more. They kept it quiet at first. No public displays, no obvious favoritism, nothing that would give the gossip mill ammunition. But slowly, carefully, they built something real in the spaces between work and life. Claire started leaving the office at reasonable hours, meeting Daniel and Lily for dinner at casual restaurants where nobody cared about her net worth. She learned to braid Lily's hair, to appreciate the particular joy of a 5-year-old's knock-knock jokes, to find value in moments that couldn't be measured in revenue or growth. Daniel taught her that love didn't have to be complicated or transactional, that sometimes the biggest act of courage was letting someone see you afraid, that building a life was just as important as building a company. They fought sometimes, about work, about boundaries, about the pressure of hiding their relationship from a company that would inevitably find out. But they fought honestly, without cruelty, and always found their way back to each other. On New Year's Eve, Claire stood on her penthouse balcony watching fireworks explode over the Hudson River. Daniel stood beside her, Lily asleep in the guest room they'd carefully prepared with stuffed animals and nightlights, and all the small considerations that came with caring for a child. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, his arm around her waist. "That a year ago, I was alone at this same window, convincing myself that success was enough, that I didn't need anything else. And now?" Claire leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "Now I know I was lying to myself. Success isn't enough. Connection is what matters. Love is what matters. Building something that lasts, not just a company, but a life." That's very philosophical for someone who once told me everything is transactional. She laughed, the sound bright and unguarded in the cold air. "You've ruined me. I used to be so cynical." "You're still cynical, just less lonely. Is that what this is? You're my cure for loneliness?" Daniel turned her to face him, his expression serious despite the playful conversation. "No, you're not lonely anymore because you chose not to be. You let me in. You let Lily in. You stopped building walls and started building bridges. I'm just lucky enough to be standing on the other side." Claire kissed him as midnight struck, as the city erupted in celebration around them, and felt the last of her carefully constructed armor finally fall away. She'd spent 3 years building an empire. Now she was learning to build a life. And for the first time since that morning at JFK when she'd spilled coffee on a stranger and changed everything, Claire Whitmore felt like she'd finally found what she'd been searching for. Not success, not validation, not proof that she was worthy, just love. Simple, complicated, terrifying, perfect love. And that, she was learning, was worth more than any empire. The new year brought a storm neither of them saw coming. It started innocuously enough. A photo on a tech blog's gossip column. Someone had spotted Claire and Daniel leaving a restaurant in Brooklyn together, Lily between them holding both their hands. The caption read, "Whitmore Solutions CEO, Claire." Whitmore spotted with mystery man and child. New family or just friendly dinner? Claire saw it first over morning coffee in her office. Her stomach dropped. She called Daniel immediately. "Have you seen Tech Insider's gossip column?" "No, why?" She heard background noise, Lily singing, the sound of breakfast dishes clattering. "We're on it. Someone photographed us at that Thai place last week." A pause. "How bad is it?" "It's speculation right now. But Daniel, if people start digging, they'll find out I work for you. They'll find out I report to you. They'll find out you promoted me." His voice was tight. "This could destroy your credibility." "I don't care about my credibility. I care about you, about Lily. If this turns into a feeding frenzy, then we deal with it together, like we said we would." Claire wanted to believe him, but she'd spent too many years watching careers implode over smaller scandals, watching capable people reduced to punchlines because they dared to mix business with personal life. By noon, the story had spread to 3 more outlets. By 3 p.m., Claire's assistant was fielding calls from journalists wanting comment. By 5 p.m., Marcus was standing in her office with his arms crossed and an expression that said he'd been expecting this. "Tell me it's not what it looks like," he said. Claire met his gaze steadily. "It's exactly what it looks like." "How long?" "Since December, officially. But if I'm being honest, probably since the day I hired him." Marcus sat down heavily. "Claire, you know how this looks, right? You hire an unqualified candidate over everyone's objections, promote him within 6 months, and now you're dating him. The optics are catastrophic." "He wasn't unqualified. Denver's numbers prove that." "The numbers don't matter if people think you promoted him because you were sleeping with him. Fair or not, that's the narrative. And narratives have a way of becoming truth in this industry." Claire's hands clenched. "So what are you suggesting? That I fire him, end the relationship? Pretend I don't care about him to protect my reputation?" "I'm suggesting you consider what this could cost. Not just you, him too. Daniel's a good guy. He doesn't deserve to have his career achievements questioned because of who he's dating. And Lily definitely doesn't deserve to be dragged through media speculation about her father's personal life. The mention of Lily hit home. Claire thought about the little girl who'd started calling her Miss Claire, who'd drawn her pictures to hang in her office, who was just beginning to understand that her daddy had someone special in his life. "What do you want me to do, Marcus?" "I want you to get ahead of this before it gets worse. Make a statement, be transparent, and maybe consider whether Daniel should transfer to a different division or reporting structure to avoid conflict of interest claims." Claire knew he was right, hated that he was right, but knowing the smart play didn't make it easier to execute. That night she met Daniel at his new apartment, a 2-bedroom in Park Slope with actual sunlight and a kitchen where Lily could help make pancakes without bumping into furniture. They'd moved in just 2 weeks earlier, and boxes still lined the hallway. Lily ran to greet her, arms outstretched. "Miss Claire, look what I drew at school." Claire knelt down, accepting the crayon masterpiece with appropriate reverence. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Clearly Lily, Daniel, and someone with long brown hair that could only be Claire. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can I keep it?" "Daddy says you can put it in your office." "I will, right on my desk where everyone can see it." Lily beamed and ran back to her room. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway, his expression wary. "You saw Marcus today," he said. Not a question. "He thinks we should get ahead of the story. Release a statement acknowledging the relationship before it becomes a scandal." "And what do you think?" Claire set Lily's drawing carefully on the counter. "I think he's right. I also think you should transfer to a different division. Report to someone else. That way there's no question of favoritism or conflict of interest." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You want me to give up everything I've built in Denver because some gossip blog posted a photo?" "I want to protect you. I want to protect your career. I want to make sure that when people talk about Daniel Reyes, they talk about your strategy and your results, not about who you're sleeping with." "Don't do that. Don't make this about protecting me when it's really about protecting yourself." The accusation stung because it was partly true. "That's not fair, isn't it? The moment things get complicated, the moment loving me might cost you something, you want to put distance between us. Professionally, anyway. That's what this is really about." "That's not—" Claire stopped, forcing herself to breathe. "I'm trying to do the right thing here." "The right thing for who? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're doing the safe thing. The thing that keeps your reputation intact while making me look like the guy who slept his way to a promotion." "No one thinks that. Everyone will think that once we announce we're together. You know it. I know it. Marcus knows it. The only difference is you're willing to let them think it to avoid harder questions about why you hired me in the first place." Claire felt her temper flare. "I hired you because you were qualified, because you had vision and perspective that no one else brought. That has nothing to do with this. Then why are you asking me to transfer? Why are you making it seem like our relationship invalidates everything I've accomplished?" "Because I'm trying to protect what we've built, both of us. If people think I'm compromising the company for personal reasons, are you?" The question stopped her cold. Daniel moved closer, his expression softer now, but no less serious. "Are you compromising the company, Claire? Did you promote me because we were involved, or because I earned it?" "You earned it, every bit of it." "Then stop acting like we did something wrong. Yes, the timing is complicated. Yes, people will talk. But we didn't break any rules, we didn't lie. We just fell in love while working together, and that happens. It's allowed to happen. Not when one person is the CEO and the other is her employee. You know the power dynamics are, I know I'm a grown man who made his own choices. I know you never pressured me, never leveraged your position, never made me feel like my job depended on anything other than my performance. So unless you're telling me I'm wrong about that, unless you're saying you've been manipulating me this whole time, then we don't have anything to apologize for." Claire stared at him, feeling the weight of his words settle into her bones. He was right. They hadn't done anything wrong. They'd fallen in love despite the complications, not because of them. They tried to maintain boundaries, to keep things professional, and when that became impossible, they'd faced it honestly. So why was she still looking for an escape route? "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "I'm scared that this will cost you everything. I'm scared that people will reduce you to being my boyfriend instead of recognizing you for what you've accomplished. And I'm scared that if I lose the company's respect over this, I'll resent you for it, and I don't want to become that person." Daniel pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with the steady certainty she'd come to depend on. You won't lose their respect. And if you do, it's because they never really respected you in the first place. They just respected your success. The people who matter, the ones who've watched you build this company from nothing, they know who you are. They know what you're capable of. A relationship doesn't change that. Claire buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his detergent and the coffee he'd been drinking. What if we make a statement and it backfires? What if... Then we deal with it. But hiding isn't an option anymore. We're already in this, Claire. The only choice is whether we face it with courage or let fear make us small. From down the hall, Lily called out, "Daddy, is Miss Claire staying for dinner?" Daniel looked down at Claire, a question in his eyes. She thought about walking away, about the safety of her penthouse and her solitude. Then she thought about Lily's drawing, about stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. "I'm staying," she called back. That night, after Lily was asleep and the dinner dishes were washed, Claire and Daniel sat at his kitchen table and drafted a statement together. It was simple, honest, and utterly terrifying to write. Claire Whitmore and Daniel Reyes confirm they are in a relationship. The relationship began after Daniel's initial hiring and promotion, both of which were based solely on merit and performance. To ensure transparency and avoid any conflict of interest, Daniel will be transferring to a new role reporting directly to CFO Marcus Chen, with oversight from the board. We ask for privacy as we navigate this personal matter. Claire read it 3 times before sending it to Patricia for legal review. Her hands shook as she hit send. "No turning back now," Daniel said softly. "No turning back," Claire agreed. The statement went public on a Thursday morning. By noon, the tech world was in an uproar. Half the responses were supportive, people praising Claire's transparency, celebrating the relationship, pointing out that Daniel's results spoke for themselves. The other half was exactly as vicious as Claire had feared. Accusations of favoritism, speculation about whether Daniel had been hired because Claire wanted to sleep with him, think pieces about women in power and the men they choose. Claire weathered it the way she weathered everything, by working. She threw herself into strategy meetings, client calls, anything that required her full attention, and didn't leave room for reading comment sections or Twitter threads. But Daniel couldn't hide the same way. His LinkedIn was flooded with messages, some congratulatory, others cruelly questioning whether he'd earned anything in his career or just charmed his way into it. Claire watched him grow quieter, more withdrawn, and hated that she'd brought this into his life. On the 3rd day after the announcement, he came to her office after everyone else had gone home. He looked exhausted, defeated in a way she'd never seen. "Maybe we should take a break," he said without preamble. Claire's heart stopped. "What?" "Just until this dies down. Until people stop questioning every decision you make through the lens of our relationship. It's not fair to you." "I don't care about fair, I care about us." "So do I. That's why I'm saying this. Claire, you've worked too hard to build this company. You've sacrificed too much. I can't be the reason it all falls apart." Claire stood, moving around her desk to face him directly. "You're not the reason for anything falling apart. You're the reason I remembered what I was building this company for in the first place. You're the reason I stopped working 18-hour days and started living like a human being. You're the reason I know the difference between success and happiness. I'm also the reason your board is questioning your judgment and your investors are nervous about leadership stability. The board always questions my judgment. The investors are always nervous. That's their job. My job is to prove them wrong. And I've done it before without you. I can do it again with you." Daniel ran his hands through his hair, the gesture she recognized as his tell when he was fighting something he wanted. "What if I'm not strong enough for this? What if the scrutiny breaks me, and I fail you, and I prove everyone right about not being good enough?" "You are good enough. You've always been good enough. The only person who doesn't see that is you." She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. When I hired you, it wasn't charity. It wasn't sentiment. It was the best business decision I've ever made. Denver's numbers prove it. The expansion model proves it. The way you've transformed regional development proves it. Everything you've accomplished, you earned. I just gave you the chance to show everyone what I already saw. And what did you see? Someone who understood that success isn't just about revenue targets and quarterly earnings. Someone who knew that treating people like human beings instead of resources was actually good business. Someone who'd failed and learned from it instead of being destroyed by it. I saw someone who made me want to be better, not just as a CEO, but as a person. Daniel's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I love you. You know that, right? I know. I love you too, which is why we're not taking a break and we're not running from this. We're facing it together. Even if it costs you everything, even then, because you taught me that some things are worth the risk, and this is worth everything. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and tender all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel managed a shaky laugh. We're really doing this, aren't we? Taking on the whole tech industry's judgment just to be together? We're really doing this, Claire confirmed. Though I should warn you, I'm very competitive. I don't plan on losing. I'd expect nothing less. The storm didn't die down overnight. It took weeks, then months. But gradually, as Daniel's results continued to speak for themselves and Claire's leadership remained steady, the narrative shifted. People stopped talking about scandal and started talking about strategy, stopped questioning Daniel's qualifications and started studying his methods, stopped seeing Claire's relationship as a weakness and started seeing her willingness to be honest about it as strength. The real turning point came in March, when Daniel presented at the annual Tech Leadership Summit. He'd been invited to speak about regional expansion strategies, and Claire had offered to help him prepare. He'd politely declined. I need to do this on my own, he'd said. Not because I don't value your input, but because I need to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I can stand on my own merit. Claire had understood. So she'd sat in the audience like any other attendee and watched the man she loved command a room of 500 industry leaders with the same quiet confidence he'd shown in his interview a year ago. He didn't shy away from his relationship with Claire. In fact, he addressed it head-on in his opening remarks. Some of you know me as the guy who dated his boss, Daniel said, his voice steady. And yes, that's complicated. It's messy. It raises legitimate questions about professional boundaries and conflict of interest. But here's what I've learned. Relationships, professional or personal, don't invalidate your work. They don't erase your results. What matters is integrity. Did you earn your position? Did you deliver results? Did you treat people with respect? If the answer to those questions is yes, then who you love is nobody's business but yours. The applause was thunderous. Claire felt tears prick her eyes as she watched him field questions with grace and intelligence, watched the skepticism in the room transform into respect. After his presentation, a CEO from a competing firm approached Daniel. Claire was close enough to hear the exchange. That took guts, the man said. Addressing the elephant in the room like that. Hiding from it would have taken more energy than I had to spare, Daniel replied. Besides, the best way to shut down gossip is with results. Your Denver numbers are impressive. Ever think about moving on? I'd make you a hell of an offer. Claire's breath caught. Daniel glanced at her, the briefest connection, then smiled at the CEO. I appreciate that, but I'm happy where I am. Whitmore Solutions gave me a chance when no one else would. That kind of loyalty is worth more than any salary increase. The CEO nodded, shook Daniel's hand, and walked away. Claire waited until they were alone to speak. You could have taken that meeting, heard him out. I could have. I didn't want to. Why not? Daniel pulled her close, uncaring who saw them. Because I'm not building a career anymore, Claire. I'm building a life. And my life is with you. By summer, the scandal had faded to old news. Whitmore Solutions stock had climbed 23%. Denver had become the company's most profitable region, and Claire and Daniel had settled into a rhythm that felt less like constant crisis management and more like actual partnership. They still kept some boundaries, Daniel reported to Marcus now, which removed the direct conflict of interest. They tried not to let work bleed into home time, though that was harder. And they made sure Lily understood that Miss Claire was someone special, someone important, but that her daddy's love for her would never change. On a Saturday in late July, Daniel asked Claire to marry him. They were at the park, watching Lily play on the swings. The summer sun was warm, and the air smelled like cut grass and possibility. Daniel's hand found Claire's, his fingers lacing through hers. I've been thinking, he said casually, always dangerous. About us, about where we're going. Claire's heart rate kicked up. And where are we going? Forward, together, for as long as you'll have me." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "Claire Whitmore, will you marry me?" Claire stared at the ring, at this man who'd crashed into her life at an airport and somehow crashed through every defense she'd built. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, alone, armored, convinced that success was enough. She thought about who she was now, still driven, still ambitious, but no longer afraid to need someone. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." Daniel slipped the ring on her finger, and Lily, who'd apparently been watching the whole thing from the swings, shrieked with delight and came running. "Does this mean Miss Claire's gonna be my new mommy?" Claire knelt down to Lily's level, her heart full to bursting. "If that's okay with you." "It's very okay. Can I call you Mommy Claire?" "You can call me anything you want, sweetheart." Lily threw her arms around Claire's neck, and Claire held her tight, breathing in the scent of sunshine and children's shampoo and everything she'd never known she wanted. Over Lily's shoulder, she met Daniel's eyes. He was crying, and she realized she was too. "I love you," he mouthed. "I love you too," she mouthed back. They were married in September, a small ceremony with close friends and family. Marcus stood as Claire's best person, crying through his toast about how he'd never seen her this happy. Daniel's sister welcomed Claire with fierce hugs and warnings about taking care of her brother. And Lily served as flower girl, taking her duties with adorable seriousness. When Claire walked down the aisle, not in her usual Armani, but in a simple silk dress that made her feel beautiful instead of powerful, she saw Daniel waiting for her. His suit was new but still not expensive, because some things didn't change. But his smile was radiant, his love written across every feature. "Hi," she said when she reached him. "Hi," he said back. The officiant cleared his throat. "We're gathered here today to witness the union of Claire and Daniel." But Claire barely heard the words. She was too busy staring at the man who'd taught her that building a life mattered more than building an empire. That love was worth the risk. That sometimes the greatest success came from being willing to fail at something that actually mattered. When they kissed as the officiant pronounced them married, applause erupted. Lily cheered the loudest. The reception was at a small restaurant in Brooklyn, nothing fancy, just good food and better company. Claire danced with Daniel, with Lily, with Marcus, who complained about her stepping on his feet. She laughed more in one night than she had in the previous year. Late in the evening, she found herself on the restaurant's small terrace, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. Daniel joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how a year ago I would have thought this was weakness. Needing someone, depending on someone, being vulnerable. And now? Now I know it's the bravest thing I've ever done." Daniel kissed her temple. "For what it's worth, you made me brave too. Brave enough to try again. Brave enough to believe I deserved good things. Brave enough to love someone even when it was complicated and scary. We're good at complicated and scary. We really are." They stood together in the warm September evening, and Claire thought about the day they'd met. The coffee, the collision, the irritation and judgment, and complete failure to see what was right in front of her. She thought about all the ways they'd fought and failed and fumbled their way to this moment. "Do you ever think about how we almost didn't happen?" she asked. "How if I'd been just a little less desperate for a regional director, or if you'd been just a little less desperate for a job, we might have missed each other completely." "All the time," Daniel admitted. "And then I remember that we didn't miss each other. We collided exactly when we needed to. You gave me a second chance at a career. I gave you a reason to build something bigger than a company. We gave each other everything." "Yeah, we did." Inside, someone called for them to cut the cake. Lily was probably bouncing with excitement, ready to shove frosting in everyone's faces. Marcus was probably making inappropriate jokes. Life was waiting, messy and beautiful, and theirs. Claire squeezed Daniel's hand. "Ready?" "Always." They walked back inside together, and Claire felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. She was still Claire Whitmore, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, leader and strategist and force of nature. But she was also Claire Reyes now, wife and stepmother, and partner to a man who'd crashed into her life, and taught her that success meant nothing if you didn't have someone to share it with. A year later, when Whitmore Solutions hit the billion-dollar valuation Claire had promised her board, she didn't celebrate alone in her office. She went home, to the house in Brooklyn they'd bought together, to the family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances and stubborn refusal to give up on each other. Lily ran to greet her at the door, shouting about a test she'd aced and could they please, please, please get a puppy. Daniel was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up in that way that still made Claire's heart skip. "Billion-dollar CEO," he said when she entered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "How does it feel?" "Exactly the same as yesterday," Claire said honestly, "except I get to tell you about it instead of celebrating alone with expensive champagne." "We have sparkling apple juice," Lily insisted. "Even better." They ate dinner together, the three of them, talking about Lily's day and Daniel's latest project and Claire's plans for the company's next phase. After Lily went to bed, Claire and Daniel sat on their back porch, watching stars appear over the Brooklyn rooftops. "You did it," Daniel said softly. "Everything you said you would. Billion-dollar company, global expansion, proved everyone wrong." "We did it," Claire corrected. "I couldn't have gotten here without you." "I think you could have. You're terrifyingly competent when you want to be." "Maybe. But I wouldn't have wanted to. That's the difference you made." And Daniel pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the city hummed around them. Claire thought about the airport, about spilled coffee and judgments, and the beautiful accident of collision. She thought about every choice that had led them here, every risk that had paid off, every moment of courage that had built the life she was living. "No regrets?" Daniel asked, as if reading her mind. Claire thought about it honestly. Thought about the scandal and the scrutiny and the 1,000 small battles they'd fought to be together. Thought about the walls she'd had to tear down, the armor she'd had to shed, the person she'd had to become. "Not one," she said finally. "You?" "Just one." She looked at him, surprised. "What?" "That I didn't spill coffee on you first. Would have been a better meet-cute story." Claire laughed, the sound bright and free in the summer darkness. "We'll tell Lily it was mutual. Make ourselves both look better." "Deal." They sat together under the stars, two people who'd collided in chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. And as the city lights sparkled around them like promises kept, Claire Whitmore, now Claire Reyes, finally understood what success really meant. It meant coming home to people who loved you. It meant building a life instead of just a legacy. It meant having the courage to need someone and the grace to let them need you back. It meant spilling coffee on a stranger at an airport and being brave enough to give them a second chance. And it meant knowing, with absolute certainty, that the greatest achievement of her life wasn't the company she'd built or the billions she'd earned. It was this: the family she'd found, the love she'd fought for, and the ordinary, extraordinary magic of being chosen by someone who saw past the CEO to the woman underneath. That was success. That was everything. That was enough.